Welcome back to Deconstructing DJG. I am DJG. I am here with David and Cameron, and we are off for a taste of something different. David, tell us what we're going to talk about tonight.
Maui is what brings us together today. So, I decided that I would start a presentation on Mary in Catholicism, but I realized that this was a humongous, messy, giant baggy monster of a presentation, and so this is just a part one.
This is just the tribute, right?
Next week it'll be Mary catching fire.
Yeah, something like that.
To begin with, part two.
Right. To begin with, Catholics don't think about Mary theologically very frequently. We usually think about Mary devotionally, and like Mary Untier of Knots, where when you have a problem that's just unsolvable because of all the things that are associated with it, you pray to Mary Untier of Knots for peace and tranquility and a solution to an impossible problem. You pray to Mary in a different title and a different solution. And that's the way most Catholics think about Mary. But that's not theology. That's devotion. That's very different. So what is Mary in theology? Well, we start with the dogmas. Divine motherhood. It's nested in the affirmation that Christ is one person with two natures, a divine nature and a human nature. And it's from the Council of Ephesus. There's perpetual virginity, which is... This one's weird, and I'll get to it later. But it's the idea that Mary is a virgin before the birth, after the birth, and during the birth.
Okay.
We will have to discuss that one, because that's a doozy. Immaculate Conception is that she was conceived without original sin. All right? And the Assumption is the Western version, and the Dormition is the Eastern version. The Assumption is that she was assumed into heaven, and the Dormition is that she did not die but fell into a perpetual sleep and was then escorted into heaven by the angels.
What's Dormition?
That's the Eastern version.
Well, okay. It's like
Eastern
in French,
Orthodox?
dormir is to sleep.
Right. Like there's a difference between the two, but the difference is super subtle, and the people from the Orthodox tradition care more about it than people from the West. I genuinely don't see a difference. The Orthodox do. Okay? All right. So where does Mary fit? As an appendix to Christology, like Aquinas, and as part of ecclesiology, like Vatican II, as part of pneumatology, the theology of the Holy Spirit, which, okay, he conceived of the Holy Spirit. Eschatology, the theology of final things, the mystery of God, the drama of nature and grace. He's part of the incarnation and all that. Covenantal theology. And then there's uncritical emotional devotion.
I like that one. That one sounds nice.
Oh yeah, that's where most Catholics sit. Catholics will insist that there are three words: that latria is worship, dulia is reverence or honor, which would be for saints, okay? Mm-hmm. And hyperdulia is the highest honor possible short of worship, okay? Which is for Mary. Now, here's something. If you went to ancient Rome and spoke to Cicero, the difference between hyperdulia and dulia and latria, we would say, and said that you latria Zeus. He's like, okay, that's fine. And then you dulia the paterfamilias. Excellent. And you Julia, your mother. Excellent. You also but you hyperdulia the household gods, or you Julia your father, and you hyperdulia your paterfamilias, who might be a different person, because your father and the head of the household might be a different person. Like it might be your uncle who's the head of the household, if that makes sense.
I think you may have lost me on the terms.
Okay.
So these are Latin terms, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Like if you're a slave, honor your father, and then you Julia your father, and then hyperdulia your master.
So Julia is honor, and then the other ones.
Hyperjulia is the highest honor short of worship, and then latria is worship. So the words are slipperier than Catholics like to claim.
Is there a reason why the Catholics use Latin besides like tradition, or is it just to confuse people? Because that kind of confuses me.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories about that.
The official reason is that Latin is the language that is solidified, kind of dead, and we use it because it's blessed and sacred and blah blah blah. The real
it
reason
doesn't change anymore.
Right. The real reason is that during the Middle Ages, it was the language of communication that didn't need to be translated between intellectuals. If you can write from Ireland to across the continent to Serbia and be understood in a letter, that is an incredibly powerful technology.
That's true.
So that's why it became the language of power and among the elites. And so we were the priests, and because the priests wrote for the kings, because the kings were not, and nobles were not always well educated. And so it became the technology of power and communication.
Interesting.
So that's what's going on there.
Like English of today, where it's like kind of everyone more or less knows it.
At least a little. And for a while, it was French. It was French for a while.
It was also German for a while as well.
Yes,
for like different things.
Yeah, it was French for a while. It was German for a while. For centuries in the Middle Ages, it was Latin. That's what's going on.
Interesting.
So, I just wanted to say,
of course, just as a quick evangelical aside, the reasoning that my parents gave me for the Roman Catholic Church using Latin was because only the learned people knew Latin, and so therefore the clergy were using Latin as a way to prevent the common man from being able to understand prayers or the Bible or anything like that.
Isn't that literally Martin Luther's like entire thing?
That's not precisely it.
But I remember hearing the same thing. Your average peasant can't read the Bible because it's not in their language.
Yeah,
that being like a complaint.
Yeah, that wasn't precisely the issue. The issue was because they would rather, like, that wasn't precisely the reasoning. They were using it to talk to each other across the continent. They weren't thinking about, let's suppress the peasants.
That's what I was told growing up, was like Catholics did that back in the Dark Ages because power
that was not
and control.
The active thought process. The active thought process was, let's have let's chat with each other across the continent, not let's suppress the, because
I guess it was a happy accident that your average farmer had to rely on the church for their like spiritual needs.
Right. It was a happy accident that it suppressed, but it was not the intention.
Okay.
Because there's some other fuckery afoot there. Okay, so now I'm going to start. Now we're going to the Bible. Let's start with Mary and Mark. Noelle, do you have Bible Gateway open?
I do.
Excellent. Could you plug in Mark 3:20 to 22, 31 to 35?
So then he went home, and the crowd gathered again, so that they could not even eat. And when his family heard it, they went out to seize him, for they were saying, he is out of his mind. And the scribes who came down from Jerusalem were saying, he is possessed by Beelzebub, and by the prince of demons he casts out the demons. His mother and his brothers came, and standing outside, they sent to him and called him. And a crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you. And he answered them, who are my mother and my brothers?
What is the impression you get of Mary in that story?
She kind of got walked over, honestly.
Very much so. Geez, man. He said, here are my mother and my brothers. So Mary as a mother doesn't actually matter as a mother. She is just one of the many people in Jesus's sphere.
Who are my mother and my brothers?
I see. Whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother.
My bio family are not my mother and my brothers.
Yeah.
My mother and my brothers are the people who are my circle now.
So does this mean that if I do the will of God, I'm Jesus' mother?
I know. That's why I was saying he has a lot of trans folk around him. His bio family saw that the scribes were planning on killing him, so they came to rescue him by saying he was crazy, that he was acting out of his class. Like, he's a peasant, he's acting out of that class level by acting like tells them, "Nah, you're not my mother, you're not my brothers. These are my people."
Boy, that's a big, like, family of origin versus chosen family moment.
Mary is acting in opposition to Jesus' mission. He has difficulties with his family because they aren't supportive of his desire to establish, and she's not part of his group existence. He's died to his Nazarene self and born again as John the Baptizer self. And then when John the Baptizer died, he grew into leading his own group.
Wild.
So here's a funny thing. In the message where we're going to go catch him, it said, what they said is, so his friends heard what was going on and went to rescue him by force if necessary. They suspected he was believing his own press.
Yep.
No cap.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
The chosen family of disciples are inside. He's in the house with them. And here are my mother and brother and sisters. His biological family are outside. The natural family sends word for him to come out, and the biological family are outside. So you can't get to Mary and theology through Mark. Mary and family are hindrances. Acting towards the kingdom of heaven makes you family. The religious genius carpenter is acting outside his honor class. Scribes say he's possessed or magician. His family is embarrassed. He's offering a different option, but has to prove it. Why is a nothing person acting this way instead of a highborn? Mary has to grapple with the situation of Jesus. He's different in degree, not kind. The most realized human nature unites with divine nature. Burning bush is united to God, but doesn't stop being a bush. Woman united to God becomes a mother. Unnamed people united to God becomes Israel. Like, she's trying to, like, the idea is that she's trying to get him to come home, be safe, but she's not doing any of the thinking, any of the grappling with the problem.
Let me ask you a question.
Right.
Now, a particular verse that I have always struggled to really understand where this fits in with things is the verse where he talks about he has not come to bring peace. He has come to divide the mother from her daughter, the father from the son, etc., etc. Could that be he is intending to divide from, like, the natural state that you are born in to the people who have, like, a common goal with you, a common value system, etc.?
That is, you got it. Like, some people are, if you, like, your bio family and the people you have a similar value system with aren't the same people necessarily. Pick the people you have the right values with.
Exactly. Cool.
That's ironically very much against what I grew up with. It's like you have to stay in the family or else. Values have nothing to do with it.
Well, the good value is to stay in the family of origin.
Right. That right there is a radical teaching. No gospel writer was an eyewitness or knew Mary. Mark was written in Syria or Rome 40 years after Jesus' death, which would at minimum put Mary at 70, and that's not plausible for that. Matthew was written from Antioch in Asia Minor 50 years after Jesus' death. Luke 50 to 60 years after, and John 100 years after Jesus' death. And the poles of Marian thought are God could have used a cow or a prostitute, all the way up to, which is Marian minimalism, up to Marian maximalism, which is it's technically not worship. Wink to, and some Catholic devotions can end up here, and official Catholic teaching is usually more tempered than that, but we'll see.
I'm distracted by you mentioning a cow. What do you mean by cow? Are you saying like God, we could have had Jesus, the son of cow?
There's a reason for the cow in the manger scene. I'm
gonna go ahead and not think about that anymore.
There's a whole thought about how he could have been a cow, and actually the idea is that God didn't need a human. God didn't need anything he could have just used whatever was available. And
That's wild. That's wild.
Noel, could you pull up Matthew
The vibe is
12,
funny.
24 to 50?
But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, "It is only by Beelzebub, the prince of demons, that this man casts out demons." Knowing their thoughts, he said to them, every kingdom divided against itself is laid waste, and no city or house divided against itself will stand. And if Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will his kingdom stand? And if I cast out demons by Beelzebub, whom do your sons cast them out? Therefore they will be your judges. But if it is by the Spirit of God that I cast out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. Or how can someone enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man? Then indeed he may plunder his house. Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. Therefore I tell you, every sin and blasphemy will be forgiven people, but not the blasphemy against the Spirit will not be forgiven. And whoever speaks a word against the Son of Man will be forgiven, but whoever speaks against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven, either in this age or the age to come. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad, for the tree is known by his fruit. Here's one of my favorite verses of all time. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good when you are evil? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good person out of his good treasure brings forth good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure brings forth evil. I tell you, on this day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered him, saying, Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you. But he answered them, An evil and adulterous generation seeks a sign, but no sign will be given to it except for the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, or the belly of the earth. The men of Nineveh will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah. And behold, something greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, something greater than Solomon is here. When the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through a waterless place seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. Then it goes and brings with it 7 other spirits, more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there, and the last state of that person is worse than the first. So also it will be with this evil generation.
What we have here is Jesus acting above his honor station again, and you see why Mary would want to rescue him.
While he was still speaking to the people, behold, his mother and his brothers stood outside, asking to speak to him. But he replied to the man who told him, Who is my mother, and who are my brothers? And stretching out his hand towards his disciples, he said, Here are my mothers and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother.
Note what he does not say. He does not say that prophet is not honored in his house like before. This is a slightly softer version. He does not, like, he says that he still says that the bio family is not his family and they are outside versus inside, but he does not give a full-throated condemnation.
Although he does give quite a bit of condemnation that is not in Mark. That other stuff, the blasphemy against the Spirit, I know we talked about this on that sin Bible quiz that we did, and there was all sorts of debates about what is that blasphemy against the Holy Spirit.
Right. And like brood of vipers,
That's
snake
such a
bastard.
good word.
Translate that mentally as snake bastards. You are the bastard of the great of the serpent in the garden.
Nice.
That's what he's saying.
Sounds fun.
This is extremely insulting, and that's why his family is trying to rescue him. This is the same setup. But there's also a nativity story, but Mary is a background figure in the infancy narrative, and the Annunciation is to Joseph. And Joseph has a dream, and Mary is there, and that's a whole thing about male honor systems, and I will go into that later. I'll get with that later. All right, Luke 3:19 through 21. Could you read that one?
I'm grabbing it.
Sorry, I just want to go through this very carefully and very technically so you can see how things change just a little bit over time. It's very subtle.
So that was Luke 3:19
through 21.
Here we go. But when he rebuked Herod the Tetrarch regarding his brother's wife Herodias and all the evils he had done, Herod added this to them all. He locked John up in prison. When all the people were being baptized, Jesus was baptized too, and as he was praying, heaven opened, and the Holy Spirit descended on him in a bodily form like a dove, and a voice came from heaven, "You are my beloved Son, in you I am well pleased."
Hear the word of God and keep it. Hear the word of God and keep it. Hear the word of God.
Then Jesus' mother and brothers came to see him, but they were unable to reach him because of the crowd. He was told, "Your mother and your brothers are standing outside wanting to see you." But he replied, "My mother and brothers are those who hear the word of God and carry it out."
A little,
Luke
not quite
always
as
has
harsh.
the weird version of things.
But he note so note what's missing. Who are my mother and my brothers and sisters? Not there. He does not. The family does not want to take him away. They just want to see him. It kind of solves the tension. If Luke is trying to solve the tension between natural family and chosen family, or make
We
it,
can all be one big happy family.
like he's trying to smooth it over.
Luke's the
saying
people
that,
pleaser.
Yes,
So
Luke,
the earlier
Luke,
ones, Jesus full on just says like they're not my mother and brothers and sisters. It's these people
Yeah,
around me.
like
And
Luke
here
is
he's like, it might include them, but it's also these guys around me.
Luke is a spinmeister. He's a spinmeister and a people pleaser. He's trying to solve it by saying, Mary. He's saying at the Annunciation, where God is saying, the angel of the Lord declares unto Mary, and Mary responds, "Be it done unto me according to your word." He's trying to solve that problem right there, and Luke and Mary as the first disciple, she's the first to proclaim the good news, and Mary keeps all things in her heart, letting her take the part in Jesus' life. And then in Acts, which is also by Luke, she's at Pentecost with the rest of the biological family, and also the chosen family, and as an obedient follower of her son. And so Luke is trying to smooth over that tension.
Maybe Luke is just a mama's boy.
The tradition says that he was a doctor.
Are we sure Luke isn't a woman?
I would not say. It's entirely possible. I would not say that it's.
Because that would explain a bit of the difference in style of confrontation.
Okay, Luke is apparently has the highest level of Greek, highest level of sophistication of the gospel writers.
Isn't it traditionally like male aren't scribes traditionally male?
Traditionally, but it's not unheard of for there to be a female scribe because of an eccentric father or whatever. Who my daughter will not shut up.
Chose not to scribe.
She will not
Your
shut up
scribe. Deal with her.
about being educated. Oh my gosh, I will just let her do it just because I just want some peace.
Right.
Send her off to the monastery. It's fine.
Right.
Be a nun there.
Right.
Whatever.
Right. In John, all right, I've totally skipped over the Annunciation, etc., because those are going to be covered later. But I wanted to go over those right there because that's such a weird thing. about how, because if you stick with Mark, you will never get to Mary in theology. And I just wanted to show how Mary is kind of this bridge between chosen family and bio family, and in the way Catholics relate to the church and the family. But this is totally subconscious. We don't realize, like, this is a totally subconscious thing. All right, now, Mary and John, the wedding at Cana. This is weird. All right, she makes a request to Jesus, if she makes an implicit request to Jesus when she reports that the hosts had no more wine, which is at first met by refusal because his actions are not controlled by family need, but by his hour commanded by the Father. When she shows herself at his disposition, do whatever he tells you, he performs the sign of turning the water into wine, which functions within his task from his Father in bringing the new dispensation into the world. But this is kind of a weird family versus mission thing also, and there's a way of reading this where she can be seen as a social climber. She's not part of the wedding family. She's not like, and to make this.
Is she like supposedly related anyway, or is he just kind of there?
They're guests.
So she just showed up to this guy's wedding and is like, you know what? I know what you need, more wine. Pointing
that out, like for them to run out of wine, is on day one of a week-long wedding celebration is a massive honor breach. Like that's a massive problem. The maitre d' or the whatever the head of the master of the feast is supposed to do. She's a guest. She's not supposed to do this. This is kind of an attack on the family's honor because she's acting as if, oh, they can't do this themselves. They're incompetent.
Oh, so it's like if you're playing Sims and you go over to a townie's house and you start cooking dinner, they get mad at you and kick you out of the house because you were so rude by cooking food in their house.
Yes. This is what she did with some shady shit. Okay, he told her big strapping son with his boyfriends to go get some wine, solve this problem that she had no business interfering with. She could have made a whisper to the master of the feast that, hey, the wine's getting low. That would have been appropriate. Telling her son to fix the problem was totally inappropriate. Then her son makes this big show at the feast. And so this woman who has a son that has suspicious parentage turns this wedding that is not about her, not about her son, all about them.
I was under the impression this all happened like before the 12 disciples, before everything. This is like his first like outing as Jesus.
This is his first public action, but
did he have disciples before this?
Well, this is John. In John, time is fluid, and
it's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff.
Yeah, in John, so he's got the 12, even though this is his first outing. John is the gospel from outer space.
He literally, he actually has. It says he has. Jesus was called and his disciples. So like,
So he's got his 12 guys. He does his whole thing, makes this wedding all about him, therefore all about his mother, because he's such a good mama's boy. It reads like she's a social climber.
I've never actually like really like read this, if that makes any sense, in that way, where it's like trying to like put events to stuff and like, yeah, and it's just strange.
John, don't put into timeline. John is like fan fiction and a reboot. John is a combination of fan fiction and reboot. He takes the feelings of what happened and the beliefs he wants to create and rebooted the whole series in order to make everything work the way he wanted it to work. Does that make sense?
Kinda, yeah. Except I thought John was one of the first ones. I thought Luke was the last one.
John's the last one that was written.
I thought Luke was the last one written. Okay.
No, Matthew and Luke were written approximately the same time. The Gospels are for grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The letters were first.
Are
Okay.
they arranged alphabetically in the Bible, or like?
No.
No, they're arranged according to how they were thought to have been written at the time it was set in order.
Okay.
Which is nonsense. But you have to. They tried, and they put it in the order that it made sense to them at the time.
Sure.
And I'm not going to get into that today. That's its own mess. It's like, what are you? I'm not going to defend the reasoning there because some of it's like, what? From that, you can get the idea that that Jesus honors his mother, but not as much as his father. He's torn between the two, and but he will do what he's told with a sort of fine, and he'll always try and make her look good.
Wait, this is the
Okay.
same. Like right after this is when he went in and like wrecked the temple. That's kind of crazy.
In John, that's the case. In the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that's at the very end of his ministry. In John, that's the first thing he does.
Interesting.
Mary is also at the foot of the cross with the beloved disciple. Beloved disciple has symbolic importance as the head of the Johannine Jesus group. And Mary is given to the beloved disciple, who is the ideal disciple. And again, this resolves the tension between natural family and chosen family of discipleship. They're the two heads of the Jesus groups. So from fairly limited material, a lot of roles are attributed to Mary in various Jesus groups. And these roles increase over time.
Are you telling me, wait, Jesus set up his mother with his disciple while nailed to a cross?
Yes, as mother of the church. That's the title.
Fuck?
That's the story in John. Protestants generally hesitate or reject later developments. Mary is declared the most perfect of all disciples in Luke and John. The Marian dogmas and the New Testament, which could have been said in the first century. Mary is the Immaculate Conception? No, this is the result of development of dogma and doctrine. Divine motherhood? No. Perpetual virginity? No. Assumption? No. Mary of history. As far as anyone knew, she had a bastard out of wedlock and brought shame to her family. Jesus moving from his hometown is a reflection of the shame of bastardy. Only after the death of Jesus could anyone reimagine Mary. How would Joseph have raised Jesus? Let's go to the biblical parenting handbook.
To a child, right?
This is the part where he beats him.
This is actually kind of worse, I promise. Proverbs 23:13, Proverbs 13:24, Proverbs 10:17, 12:1, 13:1, 15:5, 17:10, 19:8, 19:29, 20:15, 26:3, 29:15 through 17, Sirach 7:23.
That's a lot of places where it talks about the rod.
Oh, it's real bad. I'm just going to summarize by saying, if you follow this, you will go to jail. Joseph is not the American daddy.
Well, I would actually argue he is the American daddy.
Joseph would have parented like an ancient Near East father, specifically one who used the specifically Jewish household codes. The father represented the family, especially the household codes for the peasant world, not the elite world. They're slightly different. The father represented the family in the public and raised post-adolescent male children. This is relevant to the finding at the temple. This is also relevant to Jesus being beaten and hanging on the cross. He was conditioned to being able to do it. All of the spare the rod, spoil the child stuff, the reason the centurion said, truly this man is a son of God, or this guy is a badass, because he went for 3 hours without crying out after having been beaten at the pillar and carrying the cross and
only in some Gospels, though.
Right, and being crucified, he finally cries out and dies. That's the centurion going, this guy's a badass.
Sounds like kind of like the Japanese with the seppuku. Like if you get the square out, you're a badass.
Right.
Just like a really weird thing to try to do.
Joseph beat Jesus so thoroughly that he was able to do the crucifixion with no difficulty. So keep that in mind when you went with the Our Father. Our Father, who art in heaven. How to train up a child is the Our Father.
Epic.
Yeah. So now we're going back to Mary. I am terrible at Latin, but here's some logic. Was it fitting? Did God have the power to do it? Therefore, he did it. Immaculate Conception attributes to Mary a primacy in receiving a privilege that all disciples of Jesus receive. All who are baptized are delivered from original sin. Catholics believe that Mary was conceived of original sin, a preparation for God, for the sinlessness of Jesus who would take flesh in her womb. Was it fitting for Mary to be conceived without original sin? Yes. Did God have the power to do it? Yes. Therefore, he did it.
When you say conceive, are we talking about Mary conceiving Jesus or Mary being conceived?
Mary being conceived.
So
All
we're
right?
saying
Okay.
Mary was sinless the entire time.
Correct.
Yes. That's why
Okay.
God picked her.
But like,
Right.
okay, no, but like God made her sinless.
Correct.
Well, predestination,
That's
forethought, you know.
that has some whacked out implications that are just kind of weird.
Okay.
100%.
Luke portrays Mary as the first disciple. By anticipation of Christ's redemption, she's given the grace of Christ's redemption first, even from the time of her conception. She was the first to receive the fruits of redemption. The assumption, all believers in Christ will be raised from the dead and taken into heaven. As the first disciple, she receives the special privilege of being first of those to believe in Christ, to be taken bodily into heaven and delivered from death. She was the first to receive the fruits of redemption. She's the best exemplar of the benefits one receives from believing in Christ. Is it fitting for Mary to be taken into heaven first? Did God have the power to do it? Therefore, he did it. You don't need to have it spelled out to believe in it.
Once you like go anywhere with the implication.
Oh, divine motherhood. Jesus is fully God and fully man in one person. Mary gave birth to the person of Jesus, not to a nature. Therefore, she is mother of God. For a divine person to have a mother, she must be appropriately honored by her son, or reflects badly on him, which shame is impossible. Jesus was taken to heaven as the cosmic Lord and Lamb of God, the constellation Aries. Mary has to be made the constellation Virgo because a dead mother of a God of resurrection and life is shameful. Is it fitting for Mary to be raised into heaven? Did God have the power and made a divine mother? Did God have the power to do it? Therefore, he did it.
Who actually is the one who like decided that this was what they're gonna go with?
Oh,
Council of
Like was it
Dort?
like early church leaders or like was it
early
like some
church,
pope?
it's early church, some councils of bishops.
Is there like justification for why they decided this beyond like God could have, so why not?
It had to do with all Marian doctrine is created to either affirm or prove or whatever doctrines about Christ, or if there's one, but once it's in place, it sparks further things in the church that can get very weird very quickly.
So it sounds to me like people were like Jesus is God, and so then they kind of like went backwards from there and like, well, Mary is God, and then they kind of like, why'd they stop there? Why even go back to Mary in the first place, but then stop at Mary?
Because they had a story about her parents that comes from a source that was popular, and then it was later condemned. So going back to Luke, there's a passage about blessed is the womb which bore you and the breasts at which you nurse. Rather, blessed is the one who hear the word and keep it. It's de-emphasizing the biological connection as the cause of her blessedness, and instead her ascent at the Magnificat. And ascent becomes the most important thing about Mary, not biology. Even though biology becomes super important, now we're going to Revelation.
Oh god.
Ooh, okay.
We're going to start off with
So 11:19 through
12:6.
12:6. Okay. Then the temple of God in heaven was opened, and the ark of his covenant appeared in his temple. And there were flashes of lightning, and rumblings, and peals of thunder, and an earthquake, and a great hailstorm. And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed in the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and crying out from the pain and agony of giving birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, a huge red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 royal crowns on his heads. His tail swept a third of the stars from the sky, tossing them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, ready to devour her child as soon as she gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where God had prepared a place for her to be nourished for 1,260 days.
In the literal sense, the woman is a constellation, and the dragon is a constellation. It's a combination of Scorpio and I don't remember the other one. And Jupiter is in the birthing position of Virgo. And this is not married. However, and with the destruction of the temple, thought ends with the thought above the temple vision. That is the end of one thought. However, there's a blurred line with that and the woman in the next vision, and you get the impression that when the temple is destroyed, the immediate thing happens is the temple's destruction shows the drama of the woman and the dragon is tied to the temple, even though they're totally distinct thoughts. Because the temple is destroyed, the Jupiter is seen as Jesus, the third temple. The dragon is Herod sending her into Egypt. This is Mary. It's also like this is basically a retelling of the slaughter of the innocents.
I find it interesting that Joseph's not in here at all.
He was not taken up into heaven. Duh.
Correct. He was like one of those praying mantis men. Once he was done, he has got his head eaten off and he's done.
Several hundred years later, after the canon is established and approved images cooked together, the idea of the constellation woman was Mary developed. But officially, like if you of the literal level, that's not there. The peasant woman of Nazareth is not a constellation woman. Through the logic of desit potuit ergo fecit, you can get a statement of belief in Mary being a virgin before birth. The New Testament is silent on virginity during birth. Like light passing through glass. The New Testament is silent on virginity after birth. Brothers and sisters, general relatives, or literal siblings. But if it's fitting for her to have the most honorable mother, it's fitting for her to remain a virgin. And therefore, even a virgin during the birth, and even after, and perpetually. That's the logic of how that works. And that's so far into magical thinking.
I don't hear much logic, to be honest. I see the logic, I don't see the reality.
Oh no, we're off in, this is La La Land.
New, as they say.
Now, let's go into the first century Galilean peasant woman. Women in biblical times are feared, not hated. They pit men against each other, and men lose. Men created institutions to contain the power of women. Could you look up Sirach 26, 10 through 12? You'll have to go to a Catholic Bible.
Wait, what? Y'all have your own... What?
We have extra books. We have bonus books.
Bonus books. I like that.
Yeah,
because we've only got 66. You have, what, 72?
Like Martin Luther didn't like some.
Oh, is that why they didn't do it? Oh.
That's where the Apocrypha comes from.
I
don't know if the Catholics call it the Apocrypha, but we
call it deuterocanonical.
I like that.
I prefer bonus books.
That sounds better to me. Okay.
Bonus kids, bonus wife.
Just want a bonus kid. Just show up one day like, hey, look at that. You got an extra kid.
Well, yeah. I remember lots of the parents that were super welcoming, and like everybody came over to that kid's house because the mom always had cookies for people or was just always super, yeah, everybody can hang out here. It's fine. And so they would talk about their bonus kids, as in kids from the neighborhood or their kids' school friends or whatever. And yeah, they were apocryphal children.
This is a Catholic Bible. What's a translation? One of the translations. So I can't actually find one.
Dewey Rames.
Oh, I hate that one. It's so awful. Please don't use that one. New Revised Standard Version, Catholic Edition, or Catholic Anglicized Edition. Please don't use Dewey Rames. It's such an awful translation.
English Standard Version, Anglicized?
New Revised Standard Edition, Catholic
New Judas, Esther, Maccabees. I've never actually read the Maccabees. Oh, it's an S, not a C. Okay.
Maccabees are also bonus books.
Oh, that explains I've never read them.
Oh, they're fun. They're fun.
Alexander the Great? What the fuck? He's in this?
Yeah.
And fun fact, the Maccabees are the brothers that triumphed over the Greeks in the Jewish lore of Hanukkah.
And
I've
also,
heard
the Maccabees story is how Rome enters the picture.
Gotcha.
Like, there are letters to Rome in the books of the Maccabees.
Oh, it's funny. I have read the Torah. I have read the Mishnah. I have read the, Christian Bible. I have read Gnostic books of the Bible. I have never read the Apocrypha or Deuterocanonicals. That's
Or
more
the
fun
bonus
word.
You should absolutely read them. Sirach 26, 10 through 12.
Right. Oh my god! Just based off the what do they call these? Like the subtitles or the subheadings.
They're bad. It's bad.
The joy of a good wife. The worst of evils, a wicked wife. The blessing of a good wife. 3 depressing things.
Oh,
her eyelids give away the fact if a wife is unchaste. So does unchaste specifically refer to they've had sex before, or does it refer to having sex with someone other than the husband?
Hold on. Read it. Read them aloud. Proclaim them like you are the pastor.
Strict watch over your headstrong daughter, or else when she finds liberty, she will make use of it. Be on guard against her impudent eye, and do not be surprised if she sins against you. As a thirsty traveler opens his mouth and drinks from any water near him, so she will sit in front of every tent peg and open her quiver to the arrow. Holy fuck, that's some shit right there.
Okay, the idea is women are horny and need to be contained to protect the honor of the men they are attached to. If a man attacks another man's woman, he steals his honor. Men whose honor threatened are the first to flee. Okay. Trying to get back to the original situation and analyze it, separating the assumptions and selective retention of information. It's easy to reinforce feelings with analysis.
All I can say is reading this, damn you Catholics are strange.
Yeah, no.
Although I'm going to be honest, this actually fits in real well with the rest of it, so just the entire thing is strange.
Sirach 42, 9 through 10.
That's so much Sirach, oh my god.
Yep.
Yes. Sirach is super important to understanding the first century Galilean woman situation.
Why? I'm just kind of curious though. Why are they so obsessed with chastity? Because how do you have a good wife who is chaste? How the fuck does that work? You can't have kids without having sex, right? And then when you have sex, you're no longer chaste.
The definition of chaste, because chaste doesn't necessarily mean celibate, virgin, etc. It can mean acting with honor,
so chastity doesn't necessarily mean virgin.
It means It means a wife who's only sleeping with her husband.
Yeah.
And I assume
and who's not advertising to the men of the outside.
It never flirts with anybody else.
Right.
Okay.
Gotta read this. A daughter is a secret anxiety to her father, and worry over her robs him of his sleep. When she is young, for fear she may not marry, or if married, for fear she may be disliked, while a virgin, for fear she may be seduced and become pregnant in her father's house, or having a husband, for fear she may go astray, or though married, for fear that she may be barren.
So, he's not worried about his daughter, but his honor.
Let's explain a lot of the Catholic guilt and stuff.
Right. Women want to arrange the marriage, but father ratifies it. Rebecca, from Genesis, went against her husband. Esther danced circles around her uncle. Judith, Jael, deadly. The father wants some particular union. The women can prevent it from happening. Joseph finds out Mary is pregnant. She didn't show up at the bath, and the gossip network, aka the little kids, took over. Marriage is arranged, not self-selected. Maybe a second marriage for Joseph. Who wants to meet with Mary to arrange their daughter's marriage to Jesus if they think he's a bastard? No one. Joseph didn't want to tell Mary's father about her not being a physical virgin because that would mean she's killed. So went to the numbers 5 option. But then the dream happened and he took her into his house. The Christmas horror of Matthew. Joseph is thinking about choosing the Matthew's 5 solution to be lenient. The first 5 solution is taking her to the temple to drink an abortifacient, parade her, and the priest reads passages of scripture at her, If the baby spontaneously aborts, then it's unfaithful. If that doesn't happen, then she was faithful.
So Jesus almost got aborted.
Yes. An alternative solution was delivered by Dream Vision. He took her into his house. The village did not forget she was pregnant. He couldn't marry her in an ordinary way. He had to collect her with his male family. He had to produce bloody sheets, the tokens of physical virginity, but she wasn't the origin of the blood. Sin is dishonoring God. Neither Mary nor Joseph dishonored God. They kept secrets to maintain God's honor. The village agreed to believe that what they knew not to be so. They produced bloody sheets with chicken blood on it.
Oh, I thought you said they got. Oh, for a second, I thought you were going to the point where they found like a prostitute or something and did it that way, but someone else to stand in.
Go with some of those anxieties, or if a virgin lest she be defiled, you can go to the rape of Tamar, either version, Genesis or Samuel. It's Absalom, David's son, lied to Tamar. Amnon raped her and then and then hated her. Absalom killed Amnon in response, and then to David not doing anything, and then raped David's harem in order to dishonor David.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Mary's life is a recitation of the terrors of fathers. She's an illiterate peasant woman and the queen of heaven. She shamed her family when the chicken blood sheet came out. So turning Mary and Jesus into your culture is kind of identity theft. Like, Mary is the girl next door with my values. That's not the Mary the Proverbs 31 woman. Proverbs 31 is for elite women. Sirach is peasant ethics. For someone who does not have money, and is living day to day on subsistence, that's Sirach.
So Sirach's like the penny novels.
Kind of.
Like when you bought a penny, and it was like a few pages, whatever, and you read that, and then like next month you got another one.
It's kind of like the household code for people who are super poor.
Being a code specifically for poor people that doesn't also apply to everybody else.
Proverbs is for the elites.
Okay, why?
Proverbs, because Proverbs is designed to teach elite people how to rule. Sirach is for teaching poor people how to get along and how to function.
It's basically accept your lot in life.
Yes.
More propaganda from them Catholics.
Well, Sirach was written when the Greeks took over, and the Jewish people were a conquered people.
Who actually do they know who wrote Sirach?
Yes, Jesus ben Sirach. He names himself as the author at the beginning of the book.
Did you say Jesus? Who is Jesus ben Sirach?
Jesus, the son of Sirach.
It's just another person named Jesus. It's not like the Jesus.
Right. It's like 100 or so years, maybe 200 years before the Jesus.
Yep.
So, biblical Christianity is nonsense if you try and make a one-to-one correlation. Mary is a social deviant. So is her son. That's why he connected with a woman who drew water during male hours. The disobedient wife can be sent back to her parents, who must repay the bride price. This could ruin the parents' family. She is expected to be disciplined and obedient, not a shameless hussy. Luke 1:35 is seen to parallel Genesis 1-3. Mary was seen as a type of the church as a renewal of creation, so Mary as a new Eve. This is an enormous imaginative leap that took centuries. And then Luke 1:35 was seen to parallel Exodus 34 through 38. If the church becomes a type for the new covenant, type for the Ark of the Covenant, and Mary is a type of the church, Mary is the Ark of the Covenant. Then Luke 1:35 to parallel to 2 Chronicles 7:1-5. And that becomes Mary as the new temple. Mary, and then you wind up with Mary being talked about in relationship to Jesus' divinity and humanity, with her being the mother of God, which I've mentioned before. How do you get to a virgin birth, or what is a virgin? Well,
I assume someone who hasn't given birth.
No. The emperor, Caesar's mother was called a virgin. So was Augustus's. All of the emperors were called virgins. How was this? Well, virgin was an honorific. It had nothing to do with your biological hymen, your a penis having been involved. Virgin was simply an honorific to elite women of certain honor statuses. It was often given after death, sometimes during their lifetimes. It could also refer to young women of marriageable age who presumably had not had sex. It would never refer to a peasant. That would, because a peasant woman would presumably have had sex. It's like prostitution in order to make their ends meet.
Where did the idea of virgin meaning no intercourse? Is that like a recent thing?
No, this had to do with Augustine. During the fall of Rome, there was a mass rape by the Gauls or Goths, the barbarians. I can't remember who. And all the virgins, who were the highly honored women, had been raped. And he said that this does not affect your status.
Virginity.
Right. Yeah. You did not consent to this. You, if you had sought them out, that would change things. But no, Augustine does do things that are actually decent sometimes. But this was turned into, hey, sexual acts are what matter, not the honor status. Which, what can you do?
Yeah. No idea. Crazy.
Augustine was trying to be reasonable, and it got turned into awfulness by people who were awful. That's where it being about physical sexual acts rather than honor status. So it started off being her honor status. She had a high honor status through the whole thing, even during the act of giving birth. No, well, I don't know if you've had children. No. Have you been there at a birth, or do you know more about the birth act than I do?
I know a lot about birth because I have known a lot of women who have given birth. I know some non-binary people who have given birth. I know way more about it than I would like to know.
Fair.
Let's say this. In Catholic theology, Jesus is fully human and fully divine. And so part of the human experience is the birth act. So Mary had to have had normal physical processes of the birth act.
Right.
Let's keep the meaning of virgin as the highly honored, right?
Sure.
As opposed to physical hymen stuff, all right?
Right.
That implies that then Mary, with this definition, never really she wasn't virgin by modern standards then. Wasn't necessarily.
Not in that sense. What would that look like? The highly honored, high-ranked, I'm imagining something like a Jacqueline Kennedy, Kim Kardashian. She's got the giving birth with all the that's the image that definition calls to mind.
I see that.
But that at the same time pulls away from the peasant woman.
Right. Yeah, because then it applies honor at that point. You really can't give that to a peasant woman.
You see how messy this gets.
I feel like you can say because she's the mother of Jesus, thus honor, which then gets into because of that, then she's been virgin by modern standards for the last however long, and she's actually sleeping somewhere. Yeah.
Right. This is how far I've gotten so far.
I'm hearing Mary is Mary because Mary is Mary, because God made Mary Mary.
Using the logic I've laid out of
if God could, he did.
Come up with a Marian title of a Marian doctrine. Let's come
title.
Up like Mary Undoer of Knots, Mary Queen of the Universe, Mary Queen of Heaven and Empress of Hell.
You can pull all those, couldn't you?
Right, those are actual titles. I want you.
So,
wait, really?
Let me think. Let me think here.
So we're gonna make our own title?
I want you to come up with a title and explain it through that logic.
Mary, the Destroyer of Logic.
All right, walk me through how you get there from the.
Because God doesn't need logic, so thus Mary doesn't need logic, so thus there is no logic, thus she destroys logic.
Love it. Noelle?
I was going to say something like Mary of the elastic definition.
Oh, all right. Explain the logic. Explain the logic.
Set of definitions for certain qualities of hers that are existing in perpetuity, both directions. And so there is a not fracturing, but a like prism effect of the different ways that you can view Mary because of the ways that those definitions change with time and with context.
All right. Now, the other thing I'd like you to do
It's a little better in mine, I think.
Using the images that I've talked about, all right, especially the more disturbing ones, come up with an image of Mary that all of these images of Mary that I've mentioned so far have been Mary as a queen or a lady or a peasant, but those are not American images. What would be a good, proper American image of Mary?
Mary would be standing on the "Don't Tread on Me" stake, and she would be standing on it with a gun pointed at it as she's in the middle of labor.
I feel like it would involve a Confederate flag at some point too.
Oh, I love yours, Noel. I'm totally on it. All right, I'm totally on board.
I'm still not exactly sure what exactly is going on here.
A lot of the images of Mary are European Galadriels.
With like that man baby thing next to them. Well, then she's like a dead peasant in, I don't know, over in the Middle East somewhere.
Ooh, I love it. All right.
I feel like that's more American. Well, I guess like if you ignore the Catholicness, it's like American. You feel like, yeah, you go with the literal and say, hey, Mary died 2,000 years ago.
Ooh, I love it. All right.
It comes back into the rapture whenever the rapture happens.
All right. Here's where I'm going. All right. Mary as an absolute Karen who's at a brunch, who's trying to get her cop son to take her side and succeeding, and gets elected to the town council.
The HOA or the Homeowners Association?
Yeah. Climbs up to a senator.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's Mary.
I can just imagine Jesus, like, at this picnic, just, like, chowing away on donuts, just going at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You keep forgetting how low of a Maryology I have. She's doing that, but at the same time, she's marching in all the radical protests. Like, she's, like,
awful in, like, the good way, not good ways, but, like, she's awful while trying her best.
Like, she's performatively doing Black Lives Matter, and, like, she's performatively doing all the stuff, but she's
social justice warrior, basically.
Yeah, she's performatively social justice
She's a
warrior.
whitewashed sepulcher.
That sounds biblical.
A Confederate flag type thing, or chopped down a poplar tree that was used for lynching. She's still an absolute Karen.
Right. Who's it? Marie, the one lady senator, no, Republican, like cross
Marjorie
with
Taylor
like
Greene.
Yes, that's the vibe I'm getting. It's
yes,
like performative to the extreme.
More like Palin, I think.
Yeah, I'm imagining Marjorie Taylor Greene, but with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's politics.
That is a combo. Holy shit, that's a combo.
Could not contain that.
That's a combo.
And also a hint of a scandal in her background that may or may not be true, and nobody's confirmed it.
Right. How much do the Catholics use these images of Mary?
It's everywhere. It is so deep everywhere, but a lot of it is unconscious.
What does that mean? So it's like kind of like so you're saying they unconsciously like go along with the Mary undoer of knots kind of thing, and like they believe that Mary is helping them undo knots, kind of stuff, or is it more like they just make decisions?
That's devotional. We're very heavy into the devotional, like the theology stuff. We don't think about, but it's all throughout. We don't think about the theology at all, but it's all through the political reasoning in Catholic thought.
I mean, Catholics are very political, because the Catholic Church is very political, at least.
All right. What's the most famous political position that is officially Catholic?
I want to say abortion, or is what is it? Condoms are bad.
It's contraception.
Yeah, condoms are bad. Which is weird to me.
Also abortion. All right, I'm going to ask you. All right, let's throw out our modern understanding of biological science. for the moment. All right.
All right, it's in the trash now.
And let's go back to the old understanding of the man provides the seed and the woman provides the field. Mary
Okay.
provided the field, God provided the seed.
Because back in those days, with their basically poor understanding of biology, they thought that the totality of life was in the sperm. They had no idea that the woman had an egg inside of her. So they thought that the sperm itself was the entirety of life. And that's why every sperm is sacred and you do not waste sperm.
Correct.
I clearly have a different understanding of farming then, because it's not what I got from seed and field, but I'm also not a farmer, so.
Right.
I'm also not in the ancient times either.
So, St. Joseph has to be dealt with because he's an integral part of the story, and he's called the foster father of Jesus, and he's there.
He exists.
Right. Paul, but he's involved in the upbringing, but he's not the father. So a lot of early church theology is trying to eliminate him from the picture.
That's hilarious.
It's because he's an embarrassment to the theology. Okay.
But aren't they like against divorce though?
No, I'm not talking about. They're trying to kill him off early. Like they're trying to say he was an old man. He would. They're trying to get rid of him from the picture. Like he was an old man.
He was killed by tuberculosis.
Pretty much. Okay, so trying to remove him from the picture as soon as possible. Then once that's dealt with, they still have to say, okay, Mary has this. The seed is from God, and the incarnation is God's seed in Mary's field. Okay, and this was the understanding for centuries.
Right, I mean, it does make some sense because you look at farming and like seed fields and shit, okay?
And this is in Paul, unless a grain of wheat shall fall upon the ground and die, blah, 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 blah. All right. So let's go all the way until the 1800s when people started looking under microscopes at sperm and finding that, oh no, there aren't little humanoids. It looks real different than what we expected. And then they looked at an egg at women's and found eggs, and they put it all together. Oh wait, women provide something.
What did they? Do they seriously think there's just like little babies coming out of the dick during sex?
Yes.
Like straight up like fully formed, not fully formed, but like humanoids, just tiny. It's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. So once they realized that the woman provided something, okay, and the man provided something, this created a crisis in theology.
Can I ask one question real quick? Did they also think that like squirrels had little baby squirrels coming out as well?
Yes. And horses had little baby horses.
Okay.
And that's why
and this is why it's a problem that kids don't have sex ed.
So you wind up with this situation if Mary is the only one who provides biological input, okay?
Oh, now I see. So before they were like, Mary had nothing to do with it. Now they're like, okay, Mary had something to do with it.
Then Mary is Jesus is an XX.
I think that's what it is. I don't know biology. I know there's X. I think males are XY, I think.
Then Jesus is XX, and somehow also has testicles because Joseph expected him to be with him in the temple. So that would have meant he had a penis and testicles. You see how this gets really messy and genderqueer?
Right. Well, also, I'm just kind of interested. Like, now they're like having to realize. Well, I guess square the fact that like Mary was now kind of like involved, which I guess is why they're going with like Mary is immaculate.
Right.
She's like she's perfect. So then the contribution of man was perfect.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense.
Yeah, it's De La Chapelle syndrome. It's a rare intersex condition.
Okay.
All right. So this would make Jesus a very rare intersex situation. All right, which would make his discussions of eunuchs make a lot of sense.
You could just argue God made it happen and move on from there. So it's like
No. The Catholic Church insists on it being biological.
then why is Mary perfect?
Because when this problem happened, it had to be solved. And because it was like Jesus had to be fully human, fully male, masculine male, because so much of Catholic theology is tied up in Jesus' maleness.
Yep.
Interesting. Which he never used though, right?
Never. And so you wind up with this weird change in what was provided by Mary being the biology into a holy space in her womb. And so what had been a pious devotion that was at times seen as okay, at times condemned, then approved again, became a dogma, the Immaculate Conception. Okay?
Okay.
And that's the Mary conceived without sin. And so instead of her biology being her field being what was important, it was her sacred space womb, Ark of the Covenantness.
This was in the 1800s, right?
Yes, 1800s was when this happened. And it was in response to the discovery of the female egg.
That is hilarious.
And
Crazy.
as a result of the Immaculate Conception development, the Catholic opposition to contraception and abortion solidified and crystallized from it's a grave and serious matter, and you should be careful before you do take this action, and you should think very seriously about whether you do this type of thing, to it's always bad.
So I'm curious. So I'm confused how you go from, hey, this is a serious matter to like never do it when you realize suddenly, why does Mary's contribution, why does Immaculate Conception suddenly mean contraception is no go?
Mary saying yes to God and that creating life in her womb is equivalent to you have to always say yes to life.
I know, because like they're saying to God. I don't see the connection.
I'm giving you the answer. I'm not.
I understand it. I don't get. I feel like I'm too Baptist to understand.
I'm giving you the answer. I'm not saying it makes any sense.
I am too Baptist, I think, to really understand this, because it makes I can't even wrap my I can't even make it make sense and not make sense. It just like the logic.
It's like the
I
rapture.
can't do it.
It like it's there, but it's not.
Yeah, that's
it
fair.
doesn't
The
make any
rapture,
sense, but sure.
I don't really think about it. It's just kind of like it was a thing that probably wasn't going to happen, and now it probably won't happen. But like, okay, I guess that makes that sense. So it's like I assume this is something that Catholics they don't really like go into. They're just like, this is what it is.
Yeah, and by this point, this is something that Catholics don't even think about. This is just the way it is.
Okay, I can see that working, but like me trying to actually like I can't make it make sense, but it can make sense if you don't think about it.
Right. At this point, Catholics don't think about it. There are a lot of things Catholics don't think about.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just true for Christians in general, but yeah.
Yeah, like given that Jesus would have been an XX penis having individual, or someone with a De La Chapelle syndrome, what does that make you think?
That I guess apparently being
intersex.
Apparently not intersex enough to be like confused or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it really changes too much when it comes to that, because it's just one more thing to add to the don't think about pile.
Anything that is uncomfortable, anything that is difficult to address, it doesn't matter which sect you're from, which denomination or whatever, there are always going to be your denomination, your sect's particular uncomfortable question that like nobody will talk about.
Why does it have to be XX? Again, God is like stuck, because I mean, God apparently can be physical. He's like, okay, there you go, put the male part into Mary and boom, move on.
Because the Spirit of the Lord came onto Mary, not anything biological. It was entirely the Spirit.
Well, so based on the fact that Jesus wasn't a clone, makes me think there has to be some of a physical, at which point either you have to have, so either the spirit, God did something physical, or just don't think about it.
This is a mystery.
It's part of God's ineffable nature.
So what I'm hearing is just don't think about it.
Virgin means highly honored and unfuckable.
Are we saying Mary was ugly?
Quite likely, yes.
Okay. So I feel like the one thing Baptists have is they just kind of like ignore all entirely and just say, "Oh, it happened," but they don't really like think about the context or like what it actually means. It's just like it happened, and they move on. Whereas I feel like the Catholics are like, we need explanations for everything, but then like they for some reason are okay with explanations that don't make sense.
Oh
So
yeah.
I don't know why they go
Our
there. Why don't they just be like, we don't have to worry about that. God handled it, and whatever happened happened.
Yeah, our explanations are sometimes so unhinged and are often so politically motivated and so obviously politically motivated that we're just like, yeah, it happened this way because Bishop so and so was aligned with this king, and this bishop was aligned with this king. They both wanted to have access to this monastery because it was strategically important and it was highly valuable to gain access to it. One made an agreement that they would let the other bishop have it if he would make an agreement about such and such teaching.
That is crazy.
Yeah, that's how some of these things happened. It's
that reminds me. Well, what's that? There's that ladder, because there's like a monastery or like something where there's like 5 different denominations in there.
that
And
has
there's
to
a
agree
ladder
that has
that
to be
some they all have
all-
to agree. So someone stuck a ladder there without asking anybody, but now they can't remove it because
uh-huh
to remove it requires permission from all of them, and none of them can agree.
uh-huh
But like, it just seems like that. Like, it's just crazy to me.
yeah, but
Where it's like,
there are situations like that where if you agree to this wording, I'll give you this monastery.
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's the kind of unhinged nonsense that some stuff in Catholicism will wind up with.
Kind of
That's crazy.
sounds like a round of Settlers of Catan. Like, if you've got
Yes.
3 wheat, I got 2 stone.
If
Yeah.
you got this doctrine about Mary, I want this doctrine about Thomas. And if we can agree to its work, we can work something out.
Kind of.
Dude, this sounds like someone like kids getting together and like doing fan fiction or whatever. And be like, no, this guy's stronger than that guy, and then just like arguing it out until finally like, you know what? And then some guy walks up in the middle and like everyone turns on that one guy because everyone hates that one guy
Yup.
because he picked that one character that no one likes, and it's just like, you suck. And everyone agrees that, you know. That's what it reminds me of. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's like fun though. It'd be fun if it wasn't like affected so many people.
Like, there's a reason so many cathedrals were named after Mary. So, yeah. So, here's an interesting question. All right. What was the motivation for that logical desuit potet ergo fecit? Who came up with that?
So is that the if he God can they do?
Yeah. What kind of person would come up with that, and why?
Someone who really wants someone who's constantly hounded by their kids for an answer, and is like, fuck this, it just is what it is, and until they get that.
Noelle, do you have an answer?
I do not.
This is what happens when elites take peasant stories and say, oh, I have a mother, I honor her, and this is a story about a king of the universe, and he must have honored his mother as much as I would honor my mother if I were that way. I'm going to ascribe to him all the honors that he should have ascribed to her. And he's the Messiah, so he's going to honor her in the way a Messiah should honor her, and a king should honor her. And he just invented they just created all these honors for her that they as elites think that she should have, even completely forgetting that this is a story for peasants by peasants.
It just sounds like a dude with mommy issues. It's like, if I give her enough honor, she'll love me.
Yes, that is kind of the all of Catholicism.
If I honor enough, they will love me back. That's Christianity in general, though.
Yes,
It is.
but it's especially, but the mommy part is specific to Catholicism, and especially the theological minded Catholicism,
I will
because
say, these are
every
the interesting. Sorry, you go.
every single theologian in Catholicism is neurodivergent in some way. Often it's I'm I'm not sure which one is which variation, but there is no Catholic theologian who is neurotypical. Like there are some who are just OCD, religious scrupulosity. There are some who are so obviously autistic that it's painful and they need a diagnosis yesterday. There are some who are uh, anxious, looking at you, Augustine, and all of them have mommy issues.
That's actually kind of hilarious. Which honestly, I think that tracks though, because I feel like in Christianity, like the man like runs the house, so to speak, but it's always like the woman or it's the mother who's like sets up the beliefs. It's just usually conflict happening between the kid and the mother, not so much the father, because the father just sweeps in, stamps everything down according to the mother's wishes. But it's always like conflict between the mother.
The mother rules the household, and the father, and if there's a disagreement between them, it's managed internally and
Right.
and definitely never show outsiders.
Absolutely.
In Catholicism, this gets turned into a relationship with Mary. Like Mary becomes the
She can't talk back because she's literally not there.
right.
Mhm.
She becomes the woman who is at the same time you always tell all of your complaints to, and in the story, she's the one who will always come in and tell and rescue you from all of your problems.
And unties your knots as well.
Right. And
is that a legit thing? Like marry the entire knots?
Yes, that's she's gonna fix all your problems. There are so many titles ascribed to her that if you said them to her back in her day, she would run to the nearest Pharisee asking
prayers for Mary, the undoer of knots.
Yes, there are. Look up the.
Oh, it's symbolic knots. Okay.
Yeah.
That's about literal knots. Like,
look up the Litany of Mary. Imagine going to the peasant woman of Nazareth and saying these lines to her as pickup lines, and she's going to run to the nearest Pharisee and try to get you stoned. Look up the Litany of the Blessed Virgin Mary.
I'm looking at the undoer of knots one, and it's a little bit demanding. Not gonna lie. You're literally giving her all the negative consequences of like you're not. Like, that's just a little bit rude.
Yeah, this is what men want to tell their wives and their mothers, but they can't because they're real women with flesh and blood. They're like, "Hey, honey, I want you to do stuff for me, but this is how I want to talk to you. I want you to fix things for me."
I'm a very bad flirter, so like it's not gonna come out anyway. Mother of Christ, Mother of Divine Grace, Mother most pure, Mother most chaste.
Pick up lines.
I can't flirt worth shit, dude.
Noel, you do it.
I never learned. I'm homeschooled.
Noel,
all right.
You do it. That's flirting.
Don't do this to me. I don't want to.
I've been dating for 21 years. I can do this.
Pick up lines, but you're reading them you're doing them to the peasant woman of Nazareth.
If you do them to the noblewoman of Nazareth, would it end differently?
High Virgin works too. I prefer the imagination of the peasant woman.
If you're a king, could you get away with this?
Oh, possibly. But I think it would be funnier if you're just a rando saying these to the peasant woman.
Do you think I should go ahead and put these in my dating app profiles?
You would get some very, very interesting matches.
I don't want Catholics though. Is the problem. I don't know how to deal with.
All right, let's see if we can do this here.
Holy
Mother of God, Holy Virgin of Virgins, Mother of Christ, Mother of Divine Grace, Mother most pure, Mother most chaste, Mother most inviolate, Mother undefiled,
Mother most amiable, Mother of good counsel,
most admirable,
Mother of our Creator,
Virgin most prudent.
This is disturbing. This is disturbing.
Mother most venerable.
I don't like it.
Mother most merciful.
My singular vessel of devotion.
That's the most fucked up one in the entire thing.
No. Mystical Rose.
I will say the Queen of Virgins with today's context makes it kind of funny.
Tower of
Yeah.
Ivory.
Lamb of God. Wait, we're back into God again?
I
What
got
the
a
fuck?
Tower of Ivory right here for you.
Oh my God.
House
Oh
of
my
Gold.
God.
Ark of the
Oh
Covenant.
my God.
Gate of Heaven.
This is too much for my homeschooled self.
You see how this the peasant woman of Nazareth would, if you were to say these to her, would go for the nearest Pharisee and try to get you stoned?
Exactly.
When did they like make this prayer? When did this show up?
Oh,
Like the 1800s?
I don't know, but it feels traditional.
So crazy. I didn't even know y'all had like daily prayers and like 9 days of prayers set up before you started. The whole idea of having scripted prayers is just weird to me. Because it just goes against everything in Baptist in me.
1558.
I mean, it's like it definitely is tradition for sure.
This is one of those things where it's, you cannot pray all of the Catholic prayers in a single day. There are so many. You pick and choose you pick and choose the ones you like. You do those, and make it work.
It's just so very strange. Is there like ones where it's like, oh, I'm about to like do a test, so I need to go ahead and pray these things now?
Yes,
Or like I'm about to go do like I don't know, go to war or something, so I pray this now.
Yes.
So strange.
Like there are prayers.
This feels like Catholics are like, you know what? I don't like choice. I want a flow chart. And they built themselves a flow chart.
Yes, you've got it. You're on your way.
I can't say at some level I can say I can see why they want to do that. And I can actually appreciate that. But also it's like that goes against everything in like everything Baptist in me. Where like the idea of flow charting prayer just seems
like I need to study for the next I need to do a crunch of study for the next couple hours. I'm going to say this prayer by Thomas Aquinas about preparation for study, and I'm going to sit down and crunch and study. I have a horribly complicated family situation. I'm going to say a prayer to Mary, Undoer of Knots, and Saint Jude, and then a prayer to Saint Jude. And
how specific can you get? Like a boil on my left leg. Could I like pray specific for the left leg, or do I need like a generic leg?
There's a leg saint, and there's a saint for people who are crippled, and there's a saint for boils.
Like I would have to pray to all three for my left leg boil.
You could pick one, or you could pick all three.
Is there a saint for left?
No.
The only thing I know is I was Googling a while ago, and I know there's like apparently a saint for the internet, which is kind of hilarious to me.
Actually, there are two. One is from the Middle Ages. One is more modern.
Which is like that's the funniest part of it all to me, where it's like some dude like was it the 1400s, where it's like he's the saint of the internet for some like completely contrived reason.
No, he created the first. He created the first database.
It's just hilarious to me. It's like it's not the internet.
Right, but it's the first, and he also theorized what we now can call an internet.
That is just hilarious to me, though.
He theorized the internet back in the 1400s.
Oh, there's a prayer you should say to Saint Isidore before you log into the internet.
Right, he theorized the internet, and there's someone whose name I cannot remember because I cannot care about him, who is the saint of the internet from the modern world.
Carlo Acutis. Just googled it. Apparently, it's in a news page. I don't know. Apparently, in 2020, specifically the patron saint of video gamers.
Yes.
Which is hilarious. Also, even more hilarious to me. Oh my god.
Hey.
Wait, okay, so he died in 2006 and was beatified. What the hell?
Beatified. It's the second step in becoming a saint. Well, third step in becoming a saint. First,
I see you to be dead first, right?
No, first you die. Then there's basically a group of activists who are like, hey, this guy's super holy and we want him to be a saint, and they have to basically do a biography. Then they have to look for miracles, and they get proved, and then there's a process, and if you pass the process, you can be beatified. Then 4 miracles more, and there's another process, and you can become a saint.
The dude was 15 when he died. I don't see anything about miracles in this. Right. And there's a healing of a Brazilian child in 2013.
There's some saints whose
so strange.
Whose idea of sainthood I like more, and some who I think their sainthood is nonsense.
I feel like a lot of it is nonsense. I mean, I heard someone say that like if you took every single fragment that they claimed was of the cross, you could build like 6 crosses or something.
That part is just silliness.
So it's like then you have like the amount of nails that are supposedly in it, where it's like it's a lot of nails. You nail like 20-some Jesuses.
Well, yeah,
Yes, I think it's funny.
The Japanese Jesus, the Korean Jesus, the Chinese Jesus, the
I
Black
love the
Jesus.
Korean Jesus. The Korean Jesus is my favorite. I love the Korean Jesus.
That's why
So
there's
buff, dude.
yeah,
He's got to be the Jesus of bodybuilders.
yeah, that's why there's so many crosses, is so that you can have all the different Jesuses.
And it tracks. It tracks.
Obviously, if
I'm looking at a picture of the buff Jesus and the Elder Cross.
I hate that version so much.
It's my favorite.
If that had been the Jesus that was the Baptist church that
He
you
is the
went
way, but like the protein powder way.
to. No, the WHEY.
Exactly.
The way, the truth, and the life.
The amount of things I'm finding out about like religion in general, like the early Christian faith, it's just like the amount of stuff I wasn't told about. It's just kind of crazy.
I was talking with Charp about Jesus, the party animal with 12 boyfriends.
Oh, I think I remember that, but like,
And how if you want and drank all the time, on the mountain, everyone seeing him between the Elijah and Moses in bright white sheets, and it was like, well, that's substances, and he has 12 boyfriends, some girlfriends, and you've got so to follow Jesus by getting 12 boyfriends and partying all the time, obviously.
this sounds interesting. Although
I think
actually, those boyfriends are actually his mother.
Right, and
They are his mother and his sisters and his brothers.
yes, and we are, and suddenly we are in a world that is super genderqueer.
I think gender fluid is a good word for it.
It's kind of fun when you go there.
I consider myself pretty non-gender. Well, straight. I don't know. I've never really questioned that, so it's like I've never really thought too much about that.
That's fair. It's kind of a thing that ties in for me with religion and ties in with social stuff. Like all these things tie together for me, and
Right.
you pull on one thread, you pull on the others.
I feel like that's kind of how worldviews work, where it's like kind of everything is, in a sense, kind of tied in. And mine just,
Exactly.
I never really messed with that thread because there was never a reason for me to mess with that thread.
Hey, if it's a troublesome thread to pull.
I can imagine.
If you want to destroy my sweater, pull this thread as I walk away.
Pull that thread if you want to add drama to your life, and you might realize, yeah, I'm straight, or you might go, oh my god, I'm fill in the blank.
I feel like I'm finally at a point where it doesn't really matter what I am.
Hey, love that.
It's like cool. Although I can definitely tell you, if I were to start pulling that, it would piss my family off. The thing is, I have plenty of other things to pull before I hardly ever run out of things to piss them off. I just avoided that because, like you said, there's a lot of drama in that thread.
If you want, that is in itself a reason to pull the thread.
I have plenty of other threads that cause less drama and still piss them off. So I'm using those.
That's fair. Sorry, I'm a troublemaker.
Just a bit.
Yesterday, the bishop was at my parish, and I gave him a social grenade to throw at any other parish that he wanted.
Those are always fun. I usually try to avoid social stuff like that because it's just drama. I just don't want to deal with the drama. I like Noel internalize everything. So you just stuff it down and hope it never comes back up. And usually it doesn't until it does. And then when it does, you're like, ah, shit. And then you just kind of...
No, if I can find a time and a place to have a controlled scenario where I can go, I have a certain amount of stuff that has been pressed down. I'm going to let it out in this very specific controlled way and direct it in this very specific way outward in a way that's not going to harm anyone I care about. I can...
That's not how repressing works. You never stop.
I vent out this is something where I've, through a lot of work, figured out how to let go of a certain amount of repression pressure.
I'm just saying, you're doing repression wrong. The entire point of repression is you never let it go. Ever.
Correct. So this has been part 1, like he said, of our little foray into some Catholic theology, looking at the Maryology, which is the study of Mary. So this kind of laid the groundwork for us, and look forward to some future episodes in the coming weeks where we will dive a little bit deeper into this. Please, if you have questions, pop them in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and as always, you can find us on both YouTube and Spotify. We are coming to additional platforms. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Have a great night, guys.
Good night.
Doodles like